right, good morning. So here we are, week number 4, and this week's lab takes place out in 2 different habitat types. And as most of you know, when you bring water to an environment, you really increase the diversity and the utility, the use. So one of the things I've always done is try and get birders out near water, because one, you get not only different kinds of birds, but an increased diversity of birds. So this week we're at Hatfield Lake, and Hatfield Lake is a really nice euphemism for the Bend sewage treatment ponds. And so if you've ever studied sewage treatment, etc., that water goes through treatment plants, it gets cleaned. However, it has high bacteria count in it, and it generally cannot be discharged directly into surface waterways. And there may also be temperature issues, other reasons why we can't discharge that water right into the Deschutes River. So here in Central Oregon, what we have are evaporation and percolation wetlands that receive treated wastewater. So it's not raw sewage, but it's treated. And then it goes into a series of holding ponds, and those holding ponds either evaporate or perk the water down into the water table, where it is cleaned by bacteria and soil filtration, etc. Works really good. It also provides a bunch of wildlife habitat, and around the country we see there are a number of these sewage treatment facilities that provide habitat for wildlife. This one's no exception, and being that it's parked out here, and I did a little panorama for you so you can kind of see the habitat. We're near the Bend Airport. You can probably hear the plane flying over right now. And we're in old growth juniper woodland, and they've carved out these depressions in that woodland to treat the water. And so we've got old growth juniper woodland with sagebrush, bitterbrush, rabbitbrush, shrub type communities meeting a wetland community. And there are 2 wetlands here. There's this front pond, which is pretty open water, and then there's another pond further back, and I'm going to try and make it back there today. We usually don't have time in class to make it to that back pond, but I may try today. And so we get to see a variety of wetland birds that often are kind of hard to find around Bend unless you find that particular habitat. So we're going to do that today, take a look at these 2 wetland complexes, at least one wetland complex, identify some new birds, and then hopefully also pick up some of the ones we've already seen, which I've already got about 6 species since I've just arrived here, mostly by song. Now, those of you that are not using online resources to study your songs, you're going to need to do that. And I said I would post a link to All About Birds, and I still haven't done that. But allaboutbirds.org, and they are a great sort of clearinghouse for bird song of common species and the species that we're studying. So one other thing I wanted to cover today is crow-raven distinctions, and I put some of that on the key, but I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit. A lot of times we identify birds based on factors other than what it looks like. And we've talked about this before, that size can be tough to tell, particularly in photographs that I give you, but also when you're in the field and you see a bird and it's off out there in open space, the sky or whatever, with nothing next to it for reference, and you don't have a good feel for how big it is. Crows and ravens are a good example, and I've had a number of students in this class who have asked me, hey, what's the difference between a crow and a raven? Or is there a difference between a crow and a raven? And someone once asked me, what's a mountain crow? I said, well, a mountain crow would be what people call the ravens up at Mount Bachelor. So one of the things that I like to use is probabilities of it being one or the other based on where you're at. And this is not just a crow-raven thing. This goes with a lot of birds. What's the likelihood of it being this species? And some of you in your practice quizzes should have already figured out that you can rule out a number of birds based on range and location. And someone noted on this second quiz that, hey, I think this is a lesser goldfinch, but the range map in Peterson doesn't show it making it to Central Oregon. And then if you read the map in the back of the book, it says, hey, northward or interior populations are expanding northward. And certainly I will tell you guys, this is the banner year for lesser goldfinches here in Central Oregon. I have never ever seen as many lesser goldfinches as we're seeing this year. First years we started teaching this class, it was an every other year bird. You know, we didn't get them every year. And we'd see one or two at Farewell Bend. Oh yeah, you know, lesser goldfinch. And then it started becoming more common until by about 2010, 2012, 2013 in there. We see them pretty much every year, but just a few. I've seen probably over 300 lesser goldfinches this year alone. So anyway, that's range maps can help you narrow down what you're seeing. Recognize that the book's range maps are best guesses and they do change with time. Now, the range of the American crow and the common raven, both on your list, completely overlaps pretty much all of the state. They're found pretty ubiquitously throughout. But there is a pretty good habitat separation, and that is crows tend to be in more open, more early cirral, agricultural, and human impacted habitats. Ravens, a little more mountainous, a little more forested. Now, this is not to say you're not going to see ravens in impacted habitats. Case in point, you want to see 500 ravens today? Go to Knott Landfill. And there are just scads of ravens. And strangely enough, there are almost no crows at Knott Landfill. But go to the Walmart parking lot, crows. Go up to Redmond, any of the parks around Redmond, etc., crows. So rangeland situations, mostly going to be crows, or ag situations where there's irrigated pastures, grain, etc. You're going to find crows. Get out along the Deschutes River in a forested area, more likely going to be a raven. All right, so there's some habitat differences. And the other differences have to do with body shape, and specifically the tail and the bill, and then voice. And voice nails it. If you hear it make noise, there's no mistaking a crow and a raven. Crow, the very high-pitched caw, caw, whereas the raven has that guttural croak, you know, that comes from deep in its larynx. And the bill and tail features, you know, you look for those when the bird's behavior presents itself, such as in flight. You look at that tail. If it's sitting still and you get close enough to it, you pay attention to the bill. And there's also some other subtle body shape differences that just kind of come to you over time. So spend some time when you're out birding paying attention to the big black birds. Make sure you're making correct identifications of ravens and crows. All right, that's all for our intro today. So let's get about to birding and see if we can find some birds. Oh, by the way, if you do decide to come here to Hatfield Lake, be aware that it is used by other birders, and so you're going to see other folks here. And so try not to make you know, rookie mistakes like blundering right down to the shore's edge where you see a bunch of people looking, because they may be looking for migrating shorebirds or something like that, and you don't want to scare away stuff that they might be looking at. So just be mindful of other folks. Be aware that this area is promoted as a birding spot here in Central Oregon. All right, get out there and bird.